Hi, and welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast, co-hosted by Abby Fearing, the Badass Breastfeeder, and Dianne Cassidy, IBCLC.
Today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. Would you love a postnatal vitamin that can also support your healthy milk supply? Milky's Complete Postnatal Vitamin is a 2-in-1 supplement with vitamin D and vitamin B made especially for lactating women. With added fenugreek and fennel, this vitamin not only gives you what you need in your postpartum recovery, but can also support your milk supply. Head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com for the link and use promo code BADASS for 10% off of everything at Fairhaven Health.
Hey, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. I'm Dianne Cassidy, lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder.
And we are going to talk about badass postpartum depression. Or postpartum mood disorders, really, is kind of like what it is.
Yeah. Because there's all kinds of things that can go on. Postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. I had a mixture.
I had all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But we are seeing more, it seems like anxiety seems to be more of the issue now than depression. But either way, one of the reasons why we're talking about this, first of all, it's one of those topics that is not talked about enough. And I've actually co-started, I don't even know how you put it, with three other women, two being therapists and one being a doula, postpartum doula. We started a coalition here in Rochester for professionals, that are working with mothers. But the idea behind it is to educate the rest of the population on how needed and how extreme this can be. Yeah. Because it is legitimately, the statistics are that it is the highest complication, the most common complication in pregnancy. It's not gestational diabetes, it's not hypertension, it's not prematurity, none of that stuff. It's postpartum depression is the top complication of pregnancy. And it happens they're saying 1 out of 7, although that article about Serena that I just, that we were talking about, that said 1 out of 5. I believe it. I think it's higher. Yeah. I mean, and that's the people that actually report it.
Exactly. That's the thing.
That's
the thing is that all those statistics go by what people are reporting, and people only know to report things when they, first of all, know how to get help and when they know what's going on. Mm-hmm. There's a whole bunch of other people who are walking around that aren't reaching out for help because they don't know where to get it, or who are suffering from postpartum mood disorders and don't really know.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard.
It's a really big problem, and people, I think you're right that it is gaining a little more media attention now, and there's more resources out there for people than there have been in the past, which is a wonderful thing.
It is.
But we have to, but there's a lot of work to be done.
Now, one of the problems that we see often is that mothers don't talk about it openly either, which, you know what, I don't blame moms, and I have no problem talking about my issues because now I'm in a place where it's important to talk about it because I'm trying to help other people. But when you're going through it, when it's fresh, when, even your baby's a year, you're feeling better, whatever, you don't feel like you don't want to talk about it maybe. But there are so many women who go through this and then say, nobody ever told me that this was an issue. And then I tried to talk to my sister and my best friend and my cousin, and they all said they went through the same thing and they never said anything about it. How come nobody told me that this is a thing that actually can happen? Mm-hmm. And it's like we don't talk about it enough.
No, and we talk about on this podcast, we talk about all the time, we talk about all of the ways that parents are isolated these days, all of the misinformation, all of the lack of information,
lack of
support. And no wonder that the numbers are so high. Mm-hmm. If this is something that somebody is struggling with, you are absolutely not in the minority.
Oh my God, no. Not at all. But the other thing too is we have these extremes, and it's a total spectrum, really. It's a total spectrum.
Absolutely.
But if you go into your doctor and you say, I'm really feeling, like I'm just not bonding well, or I'm really sad, or I'm really weepy all the time. Half of the time they'll say to you, do you feel like hurting your baby? And it's like, why does it have to go to that extreme?
Right.
Like,
because this is, right. Yes.
That's extreme. And that is not where most women are.
No.
So nobody wants to say this because nobody wants to think that they're, wants anybody to think they're a monster of something.
Well, and we're so quick, I mean, because we're so quick here too. I mean, we're so government heavy here, right? I mean, there's so much intervention. So it's like, oh my God, if I say this, are my kids going to get taken away?
Right.
You know, and there's certain communities where, you know, I mean, I worked with wards of the state. That was as a social worker before I became a mom. I was a social worker for 15 years. I worked with wards of the state. There's communities where like so many families are involved in DCFS, and they have absolutely every right to feel like, well, I can't talk about that. They're going to take my kids too.
Right.
You know, and you know, it's an absolutely valid concern.
Oh my God, it's terrible. So nobody wants to say anything.
So no one's going to say anything. I'm not going to take my baby away because I'm, you know, struggling. And the fact that I mean, if somebody, I would have to say that if somebody has a baby in this, you know, day and time right now, and they don't suffer from some sort of postpartum depression or anxiety or some sort of mood thing, I mean, that's rare. It's got to be rare. It's got to be very rare. I mean, to not have something.
It is just so, and then when you look at, so some of this, I just did a presentation on this for Gold a couple months ago, Gold Lactation. And some of the big things that you see, like you can really, this is one of the things that irritates me so much. You can red flag certain people. So if the doctors and OBs and midwives, whoever, are seeing this mother prenatally, she's got a history of depression or anxiety. She's got a history of a mood disorder. She's been in therapy in her past, or she's been on medication and maybe went off of it for pregnancy, for depression. Like, that is a huge red flag that this woman needs to be watched afterwards.
Right.
To make sure that she is transitioning well. That doesn't happen.
Right. And please don't, the first day she comes into the office, be like, do you feel like hurting your baby? Like, you know, come on. We can support people a little bit better than this, I think. But the training, first of all, and the training for medical professionals is not there.
No.
That is not there for medical professionals to be dealing with a lot of this postpartum mood disorder stuff. They just don't have it.
So a couple of things that happened recently. So for me, I saw this mommy yesterday. We were talking about this because she openly said, and her baby's a month and struggling with breastfeeding. And she had said, I really was struggling a lot with postpartum a few weeks ago. And she was really good because she's like, I finally went to my OB because that's the first step you'd take. Like most people will just kind of go to their OB if they're not used to it, and it was her husband's urging because she said she got to the point where she went to the grocery store and called her husband and said, I don't want to come home. And he was like, I think you need to call your doctor at this point because a lot of times it is to support people that see that you're just not the same,
Yeah, they know. They're the ones who know.
So she called the doctor. She went to her OB's office and she goes, and I wasn't sure because it was only like 2 weeks in and I wasn't sure. Maybe it was just baby blues and I just, wasn't needed to adjust. She goes, I didn't know do I really have a problem or do I, and the doctor said, oh, here, let me write you a script. Gave her a script for a medication and then said, see ya. Come back for your 6-week appointment. And I'm like, all right. There's so much stuff wrong with this.
Okay, can we have like a few steps in between there?
She was like, she barely looked me in the eye. She didn't ask about anything. And she was just like, here, take this medication. And she goes, and I go, but this is also a medication that, first of all, for antidepressants or any kind of mood stabilizer, they don't work automatically. So if this was somebody that really needed some kind of stability in her life, that magic pill is not going to do it in 24 hours.
Right.
So,
she's going to have a good couple months before if in fact that's the right medication for her.
Right.
It could totally like not work out for her and she'd have to try a different one. Like, yeah.
So she should have had, start this, come back in a couple of days, come back in a week, whatever. She made her 6-week appointment, and then they called and canceled it because for some reason, and told her that she needed to reschedule it. So now she's on this medication, and she goes, you know what? I started feeling better a couple days after she even gave me that prescription, which makes me think maybe it wasn't even a true like postpartum depression thing. Maybe it was just me just adjusting because I know that medicine wasn't working yet. So, but I don't know how to get off it now. She's like, now what do I do? And I'm like, I don't even know what to tell you for that because this is ridiculous. They should have never even, she didn't even talk to her. Like it just, so, and she was one who, you know, like I said, she had very, you know, a lot of breastfeeding problems, a crazy birth story where, you know, the baby was born, everything, and she's in the hospital and the baby had breathing issues because he had fluid in his lungs. They came to her room, the hospital room, a few hours after the baby was born and said that they needed to take the baby to the special care unit. Came and took the baby while she was in the bathroom.
Oh my God.
She came out of the bathroom and the baby was gone.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. She goes, my husband's standing there like, what just happened? I go, are you serious? She goes, yeah, they were like, we have to take him.
Oh, that is so disgusting.
Isn't it though? And then she goes to her OB. So of course I'm like, what OB is this? They're going on my list, blah, blah, blah. You know, because I was just like freaking out about it. But, you know, these are where our mothers are left. You know, you send them in, they're pregnant, they're being seen every week, sometimes a couple times a week, depending on where you are in your pregnancy and what's going on in your pregnancy. You're being thrown into classes and you're on all these little mom groups or whatever. And then you have their baby and the hospital's like, have fun, see you later, come back in 6 weeks. And nobody checks in with you to see how you're doing. Like, this is crazy.
Right. And you have this baby. They send you home with this baby. You don't even know who you are.
Right.
And
do they look at your history? Do they know what's going on with you? No.
Yeah. Yep. And then you're all by yourself.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's so scary. And like, you know, I mean, no wonder things get so out of hand for people.
You know, and sometimes you do have mothers. I had a mom today. Actually, I do run I co-facilitate a postpartum mood disorder support group a couple times a month, and it's on Wednesdays. So the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month. And we were there today.
In Rochester, if you're in Rochester.
Yep, here in Rochester. And we were there today. And one of the moms that came, she was new. And this kills me because the moms that come in with stories where they maybe, you know, manage to find themselves some help are the women that are very educated with where the help is. You know,
right.
And this woman happened to be a social worker and very vocal about, you know, in her history, and very vocal about being able to get herself help and knowing when she needed it. She goes, I went to my pediatrician appointment. She goes, they handed me one of those, you know, questionnaires that's supposed to screen you on where you are postpartum when your baby's like 2 weeks old or whatever. And she goes, and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way I'm filling this out. Shoved it in my baby bag. Nobody asked for it. Nobody said, did you fill that out? The doctor came, the pediatrician came in. How you doing? Oh, I'm fine. No questions asked. No nothing. Shoved the paper in her bag. Nobody even asked her if she filled it out. It's like, if you're not going to, I'm glad that they handed out the screening paper, but if you're not going to follow it up, then what good is it?
Then you wasted paper. You killed some trees. Congratulations.
Right. And this isn't what, like, and then she said that there is a clinic here that's supposed to like do some postpartum, it's like a postpartum consult, but they work like 6 days a month or something there. And she goes, I called every day and left voicemails. Daily for a week or two before I finally got a call back. And she goes, they were guilt messages. She goes, and I said even on their voicemail, it's really disappointing that a woman in trauma cannot get a call back from the crisis place that's supposed to be helping her.
Yeah. And so, right. And so let's, you know, and we can take a big step back and say, what kind of resources does this center have? What kind of funding are we giving to this kind of thing?
Right.
You know what
Exactly.
I mean? Like, we don't have any from the top. There's no support
No, we
for
ignore
parents
this.
at all, especially in postpartum. It's completely like wide open blank space. Then any kind of thing that's, any kind of initiative, like let's get some people together and try to get some money to create, a center in this town to help moms, and then it's got no money.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody there to check the messages. Not saying that they shouldn't have checked the messages. I'm just saying there's a bigger, you can step all the way back and see this as like a huge cultural problem.
Oh my God, there's so many holes in the system.
There's so many holes, and and let's face it, money is what makes things successful, and nobody is going to put money into this kind of thing.
And it really, like, if you look at the histories, and one of the other problems too, is like you just said, like in the bigger picture of things. Mm-hmm. I like to look at the history of the mom. I like to look at what's happening. I want to know what happened in her birth, because if there is anxiety in her history, then that's going to be something we need to look out for. If it was a traumatic birth experience, if something else is going on in her life that is going to cause chaos for her, which a lot of moms, we've talked about that before. Women don't just have a baby. You have a baby and change jobs or deal with a death or, move or whatever. Like, if there's other things happening, this is going to also cause some disruption for you. But a lot of times doctors are so busy that they're just popping in and out of rooms in a 10-minute time slot or 15-minute time slot, and they barely know who their patients are because they don't spend that kind of time.
Yeah, and they're checking off a checklist.
Right.
They're like, well, I got to check their weight, got to check their heart rate, and then on to the next one.
Right. And
sometimes they don't even look up and look at you.
I know. They're just kind of typing because now everything's electronic.
Yeah.
So it's very frustrating, and a lot of women fall through the cracks. A lot of women really fall through the cracks. And the other thing with that screening process is, it's like they leave you to fill out this form of questions of how you feel, and you can very easily lie on that if you fill it out at all.
Who doesn't lie to the doctor? How much do you drink? Yeah, 2 beers a month. How many cigarettes you smoke? Oh, no, I've never smoked. People are constantly lying on that. I did.
I know. I did too, all the time. Like, they do it because they have to. But the other thing with it too, it's like, okay, if you're going to hand it out, at least collect it.
Yeah.
But if you're going to collect it, you need to go over it with her. Like, what if she marks, yes, I'm suicidal, and she's left 3 hours ago? And they're finally getting around to looking at it.
She thought that was one way that she was going to get some attention, and then you didn't even look at it.
Right.
Okay, how about a word from our sponsor real quick?
Today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. Are you suffering from sore or cracked nipples? You are not alone, and help is on the way. Milky's Nipple Nurture Balm is organic and lanolin-free, made with natural ingredients to heal, protect, and moisturize. It is safe for mom and baby, and there is no need to wipe it off before breastfeeding. Head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com for the link and use promo code BADASS for 10% off of everything at Fairhaven Health.
Yeah, I remember.
I don't know where to start with fixing it.
Right. Well, we start by, we're talking about it.
Right.
And, we talk about, there's, we were talking about, you're talking about the social worker who, had some sort of idea where to get help. And, we have varying degrees of that. There's a spectrum on that as well, where, there's some people who don't even know, that don't have any idea where to go. They don't have anybody. Maybe they're in a community that's got zero resources. The place that they're bringing their baby, is, I don't know, maybe they're bringing into a walk-in clinic or something that's mobbed with people, and they're barely being seen for more than 5 minutes. These people are going to be going nearly completely unhelped.
Right.
And I'm a social worker. I was a mental health professional. I was a therapist right before I quit my job when I had Jack. And I don't think I had clinical postpartum depression, but I certainly have struggled with anxiety my whole life, and had a lot of anxiety when he was born. And I was having, early on, especially like that first week was really bad. It went on for a while. I was having really bad intrusive thoughts.
Yeah.
And after a few years, of the intrusive thoughts kind of went away, but, I was just in general kind of like struggling. I was yelling a lot. And I was like, I'm going to go see a counselor because I feel like I'm yelling a lot. I don't know what to do. So this is like last year or the year before. So I went to this really nice therapist in my neighborhood. And I was talking to her about, she was like, tell me about your birth, tell me about your postpartum. And I was like, when I had a lot of intrusive thoughts, and she was like, oh, that's so common.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a clinician, and I didn't know that. Yeah. Now, granted, that was not at all my specialty. I didn't work at all with this population of people. But I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And as somebody who struggles with anxiety, I didn't even necessarily know what was going on. It really doesn't matter who you are. When mental health problems hit, they hit everybody. They don't care who you are.
No.
They don't care that you're like, oh, I'm an expert in anxiety. Anxiety's like, whatever, I don't care. I'm moving in.
And one of the other things that I have a couple things to say about that. It's like that woman in my group today, she was also, I had mentioned that to her, like, you know where to go for this. Imagine being that mother that doesn't have that information. She's like, I know, it's so scary. But she also said too, she goes, I am a very high functioning depressed person. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm really good at hiding it. And I think there's a lot of people out there that's how it is. You're really good at putting up this charade that life is great with your newborn, and it's not.
No, and I think on so many levels, in so many groups of people in this country, that's what you're forced to do when it comes to mental health issues.
Right.
You're forced to function despite the mental health problems that you're having.
Now, the intrusive thoughts, that came up one time in our group, and I can't remember. There was 3 or 4 moms sitting there, and it came up from one of the moms, and the therapist that does the group with me, she was like, that's a very common thing, and, just because it's there doesn't mean you're acting on it, but it is very common, and it just comes out of, whatever she was talking about it. Like, the other women in the group were like, oh my God, yeah, I have the same thing. Like, nobody wants to say anything because they feel like if they say to somebody, I had this vision of me dropping my baby down the stairs. Like, it's such a normal thing that happens, and it's so common. It doesn't mean you're going to do it. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but those thoughts just invade your brain space.
They invade your brain. They intrude. That's why they're called intrusive thoughts. They walk right in, and they don't care that you don't want them to be there. Right. And they're always scary because it's like, they're kind of representing, it's anxiety. That's what it is. It is anxiety. And it's representing all of this stuff that you're anxious about. I mean, I was having intrusive thoughts about things that were literally physically impossible. Of like me having my baby laying on the ground and like a chair being put on him. Like, how in the world? Like, that's not even possible. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, but it doesn't matter because it's like, it's just the anxiety. It's totally and completely irrational.
And you're also sleep deprived. So that's a huge chunk of it too.
And you just had a baby. Your body went through all of this trauma. I was just emailing with a mom about this. She was saying, traumatic birth and whatever. And she was like, I had a home birth that was totally beautiful. And I feel like that the experience was traumatic too. Like, birth in general is like a trauma on your body. Mm-hmm. It means that you went through something really big that changes you.
Yeah.
That there's always something that's very heavy and very, challenging and scary, about birth.
I think everybody needs therapy after that.
I think so too. And we have this like, well, I had a home birth, so you had the all natural, you're all this, and so you're fine. You're not gonna suffer from that. That is not true.
No.
I mean, I think that there are situations that obviously put people at greater risk, but in this day and age, I mean, everyone is going to struggle with something in the postpartum time.
I mean, I had a mom today that, went into hospital in labor, and first baby went in labor, the heart rate kept accelerating. She never even made it out of triage, and they put her under general anesthesia and did a C-section. Oh. And it's like, you don't even have time to process what's happening to you at that point. Like, it is really, and I've had moms that have very fast vaginal deliveries, and they still feel, and people are like, oh my gosh, you're so lucky, you went so quick. And it's like, no, it's very traumatic because you don't
really
even,
scary.
You're not even, you're pregnant 1 minute, and now you're not pregnant anymore. Like, you didn't even have time to think about that. Like, your brain didn't even process that yet. The hormonal changes that are surging.
It's like you barely went through the process of labor,
Right. You can't control any of this. And it's okay. Like, people say, oh, no, I wasn't hurt, or I didn't have, 500 stitches, and I didn't tear, my baby was with me, so nothing was traumatic. No, that's not, it's all in the eye of the beholder. If you feel like, I had one mom today say, I really felt like I wasn't heard, and that to me was very traumatic. I'm like, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, we talk about this in our episode, what is it? Birth trauma. We have a whole episode on birth trauma, which you should check out. And, we talk about this, I was afraid, I never used the word trauma when I talked about my first, birth experience. I thought that was disrespectful to people who had like lost children in labor or had gone through these, these very big things. It took me a really long time to be like, wait a minute, that was actually traumatic. That was a traumatic experience. And, that's another thing that we're just like, we're afraid to talk about, and we're afraid to kind of own that.
It's so normalized.
It is.
It is so normalized. And we kind of talked about that in the group today, because that mom that had her baby that was taken away while she was in the bathroom.
Yeah.
She was also saying that she had, the cord had detached from her placenta, and the midwife had to go in and get her placenta.
Oh my God.
So, and she said, as the midwife is in there trying to detach her placenta from her uterus, so she's like up to her elbow, and this mother,
my God.
Then the midwife was like, oh, and your cervix is starting to close around my arm. So, and then this mama says to me, overall, I had a really great experience. And I'm like, I'm traumatized by what you're telling me. Like, how do we say that this is a good experience? Because after all that, and then they take your baby, and then your baby's separated from you for a couple days, and then your baby comes back and he's screaming, and he's not latching, and they send you home like that. Like,
no, I know.
Like, this is not a good experience. But people look at it as like, well, me and my baby are both alive. It was a good experience.
Yes,
no, it's not.
I don't know what everybody else was thinking, but I felt like I was taking something away from other women. I didn't rate up there with all the other women who are having real trauma. Like this didn't rate as bad enough to call trauma. Does that make sense? It doesn't make any sense. But
no, I mean, I get what you're talking about, because we feel like it has to be something so much worse. But it is
like,
bad.
Like trauma
it's
couldn't
bad.
happen to me, like that happens to other people or something,
Or maybe it's just that we don't want to admit that this actually happened to us.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, that's not traumatic. That's not traumatic enough, because there's no way that I could have experienced something that was traumatic. It's just not in my makeup.
Right.
I wasn't raised to see trauma. It doesn't happen.
Right. And so we talk about how do we combat this, and I think a great way is just opening up about it, and that's what Serena Williams did.
Oh my God,
in this great post that Dianne shared with me earlier, where she's talking about how she felt like a bad mom, and how, I don't have the article in front of me, but
she was saying that she felt like a bad mom, and even though she was with her daughter all the time, she still just felt like she was not good enough, not a good enough mom. And I think it's a very powerful statement. And then she went off to be like, mamas, you are doing a wonderful job. You're amazing. You're doing great. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really powerful, because she is somebody who probably is being pulled in so many directions and has to put up this great front of everything is magical.
Right.
And, it's not. And I think it's a great, great role model for new mothers to see that everybody has to deal with this. It's hard.
Right. And again, it doesn't matter who you are.
It doesn't. It does not matter.
Everybody is a human being that has mental health, that has a brain and emotions. And so therefore they can be affected and will be affected.
And Serena had even said in her, this article that, well, I heard that this could affect mothers for up to 3 years after they have their baby.
Right. So she started learning about it. Yeah.
And it's just, I get upset that, okay, superstar athlete brings this to the forefront, and I think that's fantastic, but it shouldn't have taken that. You know what I mean? Like, it should be there anyway. It should be there anyway. I'll have to see if we can link that on our website, because that was a really powerful article.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
To see that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it was really good. And I'm so grateful that she's taking those steps to say that, because it is really hard to say, you know what, I'm really struggling with this motherhood thing. I really don't feel good. I don't feel like I can do this. It's really hard. Yeah. I don't feel adequate. I feel like I'm letting my child down. I don't feel adequate as a parent. And who hasn't felt like that at some point or another?
Right. That's a totally normal feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And for everybody, if you are struggling, reach out to somebody. And we've spent the whole time talking about how people are not responding to people who reach out.
There are some great, like, Postpartum Support International, PSI. They are really, really great for resources.
Okay, so maybe we can let's put that on our website too.
Yeah, I'll put that on our website, and I'll get a couple other resources too that I can put up. Because there are some really great things. And you know what? If you're a mama that's been through it, talk with other mothers, like, just really talk to them and make sure that they know it's a safe place, it's safe to talk about. Because we need it.
Yeah.
We need people to normalize this.
Post about it on Facebook so your friends can see, or Instagram or whatever. Just, just to kind of let people know that, I mean, if you want to. If you're not comfortable, then don't. But if you are looking for ways to, like, just normalize something, then consider talking about it when you're with other people. Or, like I said, social media is a good place to just put stuff out there that other people can relate to.
But, and we've talked about, like, activism and stuff. We had that one episode that we did on like getting involved, and I've known some mothers that really struggled a lot with their own postpartum problems, that they went into advocacy and trying to make a difference and setting up, call stations or warm lines or whatever, and having, just getting some help out there, resources, getting a resource list, something.
Right. If we want to see this change, we're going to have to do it ourselves, because it's not coming from anywhere else. And the changes that are happening and will happen will come from this community.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's why we're badass, right?
Right. And you all are too.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I mean. All of us, our community. We're a badass community.
The whole, yes, badass moms.
Yeah.
And parents, badass parents.
Gosh, totally. But yeah, that's, so it's kind of like in a nutshell. There's so much more to talk about. But,
I know. This is such an amazing episode. I feel like we have to do part 2 at some point down the line.
I know, we should probably at some point. We will.
Yeah.
I could spend the whole time just telling stories of poor mamas. But
yeah, I'm sure.
And our own, just even our own stories. But yeah, so it's really powerful, and I hope, this helps somebody that's listening, or, we'll get some resources out there too.
Yeah.
You can at least get a start if you were looking for resources, or even to pass it along to somebody else that you might know too. That's always a good thing.
So please leave us a review on iTunes if you can. We really appreciate that. It helps to get this into more people's visibility. And head over to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com for our sponsor links, and for other episodes, and for all of the resources that we talked about today that can help you and your parent friends out.
Yeah. And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.